Hello there once again, fellow flight simmers and cockpit builders. Today I'm going to record a video on something that is not really SimVim cockpit, and it's a little bit related to it, I guess you can say, because of some of the methods and processes that you have to use for this can also be used for SimVim cockpit when you're talking about custom data refs and custom commands. So what I'm talking about is the Saitek panels, that are in our home cockpits, or some of you guys might also have some of these things. So as you guys may know, um, my cockpit includes, a couple of these Saitek panels. I have up here the switch panel, and then I have the multi-panel in the middle right above the yoke, which controls all the autopilot commands and all that. And it also have auto throttle, flaps up and down, and all that good stuff. And then I have two radio panels over here on the left. So um, a lot of the times when you basically download the software, which you need to use to make these things work with X-Plane, which is X-Saitek Panels, and current and latest version is version 2.75. Um, they come with a default configuration file, which for most airplanes, maybe some of the things will work and some of them won't. But the problem with a lot of the custom payware airplanes, as we've come to find out, is that they use a lot of custom data refs and commands to perform certain functions. And then that's when we find that the buttons and switches on our panels don't do nothing. They don't work as we would like them to. So in order to fix that, we have to go into a configuration file and we have to put our own commands or data refs that we want to manipulate using those switches and everything. So that's what we're going to talk about on this video here. So yeah, so the reason that I have to do this too is because there's a lot of functions, and once again I go back to the same thing, that if SimVim would allow us to recommand or reconfigure every single parameter for airplanes that don't do what they're supposed to do, it would be awesome, because then you would be able to change any single mapping to do whatever you wanted it to do. I fly many different airplanes, and including this helicopter here, and there's a lot of times when I wanted to do something but it won't let me, because the custom configurator won't allow me to change something, because it thinks that that command should work as it is programmed to work, straight out of the box. And I've tried to tell Vlad many times that there's a lot of functions in a lot of airplanes that don't work like they're supposed to, and if he would just allow us to change all of them, then it would make our life a lot easier, because then he wants us to tell him, when something doesn't work, oh, let me add another command for that, or let me open it up so you can make it editable. And I kind of proposed to him that why doesn't he just give us an option, like if we know what we're doing, to be able to change all of them, and then that way we wouldn't have to be bugging him non-stop, in order to do everything we need to do. So anyway, that's the reason why some of the commands and functions of airplanes, I put them on the Saitek panels, and some of them I put them on my home cockpit. So first things first, the program I am talking about is this one right here. It's called X-Saitek Panels, version 2.75. It's on the xplane.org website, and I will try to remember to put a link in the description down below. So basically, this one will allow you to use all the Saitek stuff. It will allow you to use the switch panel, radio panels. I think it supports up to 3 radio panels. Yeah, it says right here. You can use a multi-panel, and also the background information panel, which is the one where all the annunciators and everything are. And I think it looks like it works with Linux, with Windows, and with Mac. So it's a pretty handy utility. And once you download it and install it, the instructions, and I'm sure there's tons of videos showing you how to do all this stuff, so I don't need to go into that. I'm just going to talk about something that I discovered today after somewhat a lot of frustration with something I couldn't get done. There is also this other page which has the configurations. So if you go to basically this page on the xplane.org, which I'll also try to put a description, there's a ton of pre-built configuration files for all the different airplanes, a lot of different ones, a lot of payware aircraft. So this is pretty cool. That way you don't have to basically, do it all yourself. You can just download some of these configuration files and you'll be good to go. Unless, of course, some of the buttons and switches do some other things that you don't want to do. You can go in there and tweak it yourself to do whatever you want it to do. So, so bottom line is, anyways, when you download the program, you need to go into your X-Plane folder, resources, plugins, and you're going to have it in here. So this is where the X-Saitek Panels plugin will live. And inside this folder, there is the standard configuration file. So if there is no configuration file in your airplane folder, X-Plane will always look in here for the configuration file. And this one right here, basically, it has all the commands for all the different switches on everything, on all the panels. So it starts off with starter switch. So basically, you have many options when you want to do this. You can disable that switch. You can use the default command that he put into it. You can make a remappable command, a remappable data reference, or a remappable float data reference. So depending on what number you put here for each little function, that's what will determine what that switch will do for that particular thing. So in my example, for this helicopter that I've been working with here, I wanted to be able to start the engine using the starter switch, but it wasn't working. So I was trying to do, basically it had the number 1, which is the default command for that particular switch, and it just wasn't doing anything. I could hear the starter motor engage, and I could hear the sound coming up as if the starter was turning and starting the aircraft, but it just wouldn't do anything. So what I ended up having to do is I made my own configuration file, and these right here you put inside the aircraft folder. So I have a X-Plane 11 Bell 407 helicopter that uses a GTN. I have the GTN mod in it, so I have to make sure that I put it in here. So whatever X-Saitek Panels ini file you put in here, that's going to be the one that is going to use first. If it doesn't find a file in here, it goes to the default folder that I showed you earlier, and it uses that ini file from there. So what I did here, if we go down to the starter switch start position, you can see that I put a remappable float data reference. I put the number 4 here. So first things first, before we go any further, if you're going to use a remappable command, like if there's a custom command that it uses, you're going to choose number 2 for remappable command. You're going to put that here, and you would put the command for on right here and for off right here. So each one of them is, the command for on and the command for off. You can also put many different commands for the same switch. So if you wanted to do, let's say, to turn on all your fuel pumps, like it is on the 737 and the Zibo, you would put a command on and off here for a bunch of different fuel pumps. And as soon as you turn one switch, it'll turn all the fuel pumps on or all the fuel pumps off. So what I did is I put a remappable float data reference. So this is the data reference that I had to use because the original default one wasn't working. And then I did a 100 and a 50 because, as I'll show you right now in the helicopter, when the starter is at 100, it actually turns into a 1, and when it's at 50, it turns into 0.5. And that's kind of what it explains up here. It says that a remappable float data reference, a 100 will end up with 1.000, and a 50 will end up with 0.50000. So basically, that's the one I had to use. And so we'll go to the helicopter right now just so you can see what I'm talking about. So here we are in the helicopter, and I'll bring up the data ref tool, and that's why I mentioned earlier that it's kind of related to SimVim Cockpit, because all this that I'll need to do for this is what you need to do for SimVim Cockpit if you want to use custom commands and data ref. So if we go to my starter here, and if we try to move the starter switch, you can see that there's no commands show up right here, right? So now we can be pretty safe that there is no command. But there's some other stuff related to that that kind of is the reason why I decided to make this video is because of that and the float data reference, which I'm talking about right now. So now if you want to find what data ref it is, you can always go to data refs right here, and you'll get a list of all the data refs that are going on right now in this airplane. But that is a lot of data refs, and sometimes when you're trying to look through them, you can't really find the one you're looking for. So it helps if you have this little star checked right here, clicked on, you can type something related to the one you're trying to do. So for example, if I put start, now it basically got rid of everything except, when I push something, if it starts with the word start or it has the letter start in it, it will show up. So if I put the starter, to this position, you see that when I moved it down, it says 0. And then when I moved it up, it said 1. And when I leave it alone, is at 0.5. So this is a thing that caught me off guard when I was trying to program this, because some of these things, like you'll see, for example, and I'm gonna put on my camera here for the switch panel here. There's a little bit of a delay I'm seeing between when I'm touching something here or doing something and when I can see it on the camera. So hopefully it doesn't throw you guys off too much. But let's say, for example, the nav light, I could see that it's working here by default, and the anti-collision light as well. Now if we go back over to, we go back to commands, and we clear it off and we turn on those lights, we could see that there is a command that showed up for each one of those. So strobe lights on and off, and nav lights on and off. So those have commands. So we're able to just basically use, if it wasn't working by default, we would probably just be able to use those commands to turn on and off the lights using these switches right here. Now if we go to the pitot heat and the engine anti-ice, I programmed them to these two switches, which is the de-ice and the pitot heat. So we can see that they work. You see they turn on and off, but there's no commands right here. So that's telling me that there's a data ref related to that, because actually I don't see any commands. Now, so if we go to the data ref, and once again, just to make it easier to find it, we'll just start with the pitot heat. So we'll type pitot, and then we'll move that switch. Oops, let's see. Okay, there we go. So we can see that a pitot heat data reference came up. So it's B407/overhead/SWT, which I guess stands for switch, underscore pitot underscore heater, and then you has a 0, and when I turn it on, it turns into a 1, and it gets highlighted blue because I changed it, and eventually it'll go back to white. So this is what was driving me crazy. I was thinking, okay, this is a data ref, so I could do a 0 or a 1 and it'll work. So now if I go right here and you put a 0, and I talked about this before on the other videos with SimBim Cockpit, if you can type a number in here and then press enter, and if the switch moves, that means that it's a writable data ref. So if I put a 0, you see the pitot heat is on right now, so I put a 0 and press enter. Oops, hold on, I think I put something wrong here. Oh, you know what? I forgot to tell you guys one more thing. Once you assign something to the switches here, you cannot move them with a switch. If this switch is on right here for pitot heat, I cannot turn it off even with a mouse or by typing a number in here, and I completely forgot about that. So the only way to move this switch now, if I have it bound to a X-Saitek panel is to actually move the button itself. So that's not going to work for my demonstration. I'll show it to you a little bit later. But what I wanted to tell you guys is that this is what threw me off. It has a 0 with a decimal point at the end, and when you turn it on, it has a 1 with a decimal point at the end. And at first I was thinking maybe that's just a, something that's there, and I wasn't understanding that that's what makes this one a float data reference, not just a regular one. So I'm going to show you guys another example here. And this one I have not programmed yet, so this one's going to be a good one. So right here, the hydraulic system, I don't have it programmed. I am going to program him to this one right here, to this switch right here, which is a cowl flaps. So if I type here hydraulic HYD, and then I move that switch, we can see that it's B407 overhead slash SWT slash hydraulic, which is just HYDR underscore sys, and right now it's 1, it's on. So if I can go ahead and put a 0 in here and then press enter and it turns off the switch like it did, that's telling me that that's a writable one. And once again, that's what really threw me off before, that I was trying to use these commands or these data refs with only making them a regular data ref, and it wasn't working because it wasn't expecting a 1 or a 0. It was expecting a 1.0 or a 0. So once I figured that out, then I was able to make it work. So I'm going to pretend now that we're going to go ahead and do that, because since I already have the DI switch working as well, there's no point in teaching you guys the ones that I already have programmed. Okay, so we're going to go back to our configuration file here, the one I have inside my Bell 407 folder, and we're going to go ahead and find the cowl flap switch. So I have learned that the best way to get to a certain area fast is just to use the page down. I already kind of learned how far down different things are, so I could kind of find them a little bit faster. But so basically there's the DI switch right here on the bottom, there's the pitot heat, the landing gear switch, and there's the cowl flap switch. So in order to do the cowl flap switch, actually I'm gonna bring it to the other screen so you can see it all together here. So the cowl flap switch right now has a 1, which means the default. So we don't want to do that. We want to do a remappable float data reference. So we're going to switch that to a 4, and then we're going to go down. We're not going to, these are all for commands. So you'll see a lot of commands, 8 of them apparently, and then you get a space, and then you get the data reference for the cowl flaps. So in the data reference, we're going to type this right here. So we're going to put that right here. Unfortunately, you cannot just copy and paste, so we have to type it out. So B407 overhead SWT underscore HYDR underscore SYS. And another thing that's very important is you need to have the capitalization exactly the same. I think that if you put something without the right capitalization, it will not work. So if you spell out the exact same text up here but without any capitals, I think it won't work. So just to be on the safe side, make sure you do that. So remember, for when we want it to be for the open value, which is in this position is up, is open. I'm sorry, down is open, up is closed. So we want it to be, when it's closed, I want them to be on, because just because I have all these switches that when they're up they're on, and when they're off they're down. So just to keep it the same, I want it that when it's open it's going to be off. So I'm going to put a 0 right there. And when it's closed, which would be up here, I want that to be on, which would be 1.0 or 100. You could put a 100 because remember it said that a 100 will become 1.0 and a 50 will become 0.50. So we'll leave it at 100. we'll go ahead and save our file. And then I have to restart the simulator in order for it to take effect. I don't think it works if I just do... I have tried it before and I don't think it works. When you put reload all Lua script files, we'll give it a shot, but I don't think it will. So yeah, it's not doing anything. So I'm gonna go ahead and restart the simulator and I'll be right back. Okay, we're back in the cockpit here, so we're gonna go ahead and try out that switch and hopefully it will work. So let's go to the overhead panel once again, and I'm gonna get rid of this window here because we don't need it and you can't see it anyways. So okay, so right there you can see that when I turn it up one way it moves, and then when I do it the other way it moves again, and as you can see the number up here switches the way it's supposed to be. So I just got to go back over there and flip them over again and everything will be okay like that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to show you the Zibo file. So this one here, this is the original Zibo file, but I have modified it as well myself because there's a lot of things on here that I didn't like what it had in it, so I switched it up myself. So first things first, as you can see, if you go to the starter switch off position and all the other ones, it's going to have a special command that he made, which is using the XXXP for the starter of the 737. So that one right there, it's a remappable command, which is a custom one that he made. And same thing if you go over to the starter switch on the right, the starter switch on the left, it's the same thing, and then the starter switch in the both, and so on and so forth. So it's all the same. So when we get to the other commands here, this is where we're going to start to see the different ones right here. You can see that for the battery master switch, a remappable command number 2, and then this is the one he used for battery switch down and up. So that's another one that he changed. And then there's the standby battery. I actually switched some of these because they weren't working according to the way I wanted them to. So I actually made some switches on the bottom, the panel and the beacon light. I made it to do the covers of the 737. Now this one right here for the IRS, this is an interesting one. So you can see that for this one he also used the remappable command number 2, and he did for the IRSs. So the IRS switches, they do many different positions for the left one and the right one when you turn them on. So this is an interesting one where you could see it do many different commands. Just for one flick of the switch it'll do 4 different things. So that's kind of cool right there. And then we go to the fuel pump switch, and the fuel pump switch I had to put a remappable float data reference later, which is a number 4, because it wasn't working for me after there was an update on the Zibo where it didn't work anymore. So if we go down here we can see that it uses all the different fuel tanks, the right 1, right 2, left 1, and left 2. I actually removed the center ones just because most of the time on the short flights that I do, I never use the center fuel tanks. So I remove those, and if I end up doing a flight where I do need them, then I can just manually turn those on and off. So that's good. And then this is for the window heat. So when you use the de-ice switch, it'll turn on all 4 window heat switches on and off. So this is another example of where one switch can do many different things. So hopefully you get the idea with this. It's the Zibo, since it has a lot of buttons and everything, it's very good for this type of demonstration, that you can get one switch to do many things. Okay, so hopefully you can see that using that configuration file for the X-Saitek panels is pretty handy. There is also another program which is called SPAT-Next, which is another one that can be used to configure all the commands and functions of all the switches and everything for the Saitek panels, and many other things too. And that one can also be used for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, which I am using now also, even though I really never fly 2020 right now, you know. And yeah, so hopefully this video helped clear some of those things up for some of you guys that use this. I'm gonna try to make a video going over all the different parts of my home setup right here, because I just realized that I've never actually done that. So I'll try to get, to recording that one pretty soon. So, well, thank you guys very much for watching, like always, and see you on the next one.